wanted to kick off the 30th anniversary of the ADA week. And from ADA, we mean American with Disabilities Act. That was legislation that really was a game changer for people with disabilities. Before that was made in legislation, we would have no protection. So basically, if you were a person with a disability, you would not be able to be mainstreamed in school. You would not have the protection that everything online would have to be accessible. And, so much more. It helps with employment and it's overall discrimination. And I think what's really timely here is that as we continue to fight for the rights of other marginalized groups, it's extremely important that we think about intersectionality with race and disability at this time. But wanted to give you guys a 101 on disability communications because, my company makes 1 out of every 6 ads. And so many times I see these amazing ads and they're not accessible. And I see so many disability rights activists not making their posts accessible. So really they're excluding other people with disabilities and they don't mean to. And as you guys are your own brands, and we just want to make sure that you're creating end-to-end inclusive experiences. So Poppy and I put together this document about, if you had an hour, what are the basics you need to know? And I'll kick it off to Poppy.
Oh my gosh. Okay. First of all, I want to say I naturally talk very slowly. So if there's a slide where you're like, hold up, Poppy, slow down, cognitive disability, ADHD stuff, it's fine. I completely understand. But yeah, we'll get right into it. Basically, it's going to cover social media and content accessibility as a whole. And the aims of the class will be further your knowledge of online media, communications, and predominantly how that intersects with accessibility and disability. Because I don't think a lot of people realize that. And then also education on the current social media accessibility and trending platforms. So trending. And explore digital and creative tools as well as their accessibility. And also a very short introduction into Adobe Creative Cloud, because I know as a disabled person how intimidating it can be to see Adobe because, it's professional, it's scary. So we just want to clear up some basics for you. So maybe you can attempt to do it yourself. So a quick introduction to social media and why it is so important. I mean, you probably know it's important just from quarantine in the last few months. Like that's how our social life has become now. And the main reasons is it's communication, it's connection, it's instruction, and it's promotion. So it's constantly changing how we interact with others and how we share information. But it's also used by businesses and governments to communicate information and provide services. And most platforms aren't actually accessible when standing alone. They need the help of other programs like iOS. So social media can be hard to navigate. For example, those using screen readers may have difficulty with headers, and there's you need keyboard shortcuts, and there's no alternate text. We're going to explain all that. And however, there are tips that can be learned to make the experience more bearable for those who require accessibility. Ta-da! So these are some tips I'm going to run by you, hopefully very quickly. I want you to try and avoid flashing images and GIFs. Be mindful of these. There are multiple reasons, but they're not always accessible. Try writing hashtags in camel case. So this means, for example, Disability Pride Month, capitalize the D, the P, and the M. You want to make sure that it's easy to be read for those with like low vision or just in general cognitive disabilities. You want to include alternate text, so image descriptions. This is actually available like embedded on Instagram and Twitter, but most of the time you might have to do this yourself.
Yeah, and I think the one thing is like they are really bad. So you see the captioning that's done right here, and that's using AI. Yeah. And Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, they have it built in to do it automatically, but it doesn't work. So you have to go into your settings for each post and write that alt text. For the last 2 years, Instagram wasn't accessible. So if you are blind and you use a screen reader, and how you use a screen reader is that you have a device, software built into your computer, and that you hit tab. And that tab goes through every single word or image in that post. So
we're going to get into that, yeah, and the difficulties that brings up, because trust me, it can be hard. But yeah, that's essentially what a screen reader is. It will read your whole entire screen to you. So like that, obviously it works on multiple disabilities beyond just vision. But yeah, before they had it embedded, we'd have to write it ourselves. So we're going to talk about that more, but yeah. So this is also why it's important to use easy English and plain language, which is essentially a style of writing that people with low literacy levels can understand, but also just a way to provide more concise information. I'm trying to do it now, for example. I'm not the best of it, but and also adequate spacing between text and lines. The American Foundation of the Blind actually recommends a 1.5. Yeah, and use large text when possible. So it's actually recommended to be about 12 point, but I would say 14 to 16 at least if you're making like a PowerPoint, for example, like now. Websites should have a clear navigation system and be keyboard friendly. This means that you can navigate a whole website using one key on your keyboard. That is obviously very complicated, but that's the basics of it. And avoid ableist language where possible. For example, insane. There's other things like crazy. We don't even think they're ableist because people use them on a daily basis, but there are like ableist undertones to those. And then also inspiration porn, which, sorry for using the word porn, but that's what it is. It's sharing content that objectifies disabled people. And that comes under accessibility because you not only want to, share your content in an accessible way, but you want to have the context being accessible too and inclusive. So we're going to talk about some of that now. Inspiration porn. Uncomfortable word, I know, but it's an uncomfortable subject. So Stella Young is actually the person who coined this. It is the portrayal of people with disabilities as inspirational and solely or in part on the basis of their disability. And we see this a lot in media, like all sorts of media, on social media and the news. Examples of this include students. For example, there was a student who had Down syndrome and they were elected prom king or queen. And this was depicted as an act of charity, which it really isn't. We're people. And also profiles of disabled graduates that focus mainly on the sacrifices that family members or friends made, but not so much the fact that they were lacking accommodations and accessibility whilst at school. And like I have family members myself who act as my carers, and I know they work extremely hard, but there are issues with this. I am my own person, and I'm sure you want to be presented in that way too. Video clips of restaurant employees helping disabled customers eat. There should be accessibility there. And also memes and stock photos that depict smiling, athletic, conventionally attractive disabled people. And often they will have uplifting slogans about hard work and gratitude and the value of positive mental attitude. And I thought I'd show you the video that Stella Young actually did for the TED Talk a few years back, which basically just has a lowdown of what inspiration porn is, probably way better than I could explain it myself. So I hope this plays.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you dramatically. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to tell you that we have been lied to about disability. Yeah, we've been sold the lie that disability is a bad thing. Capital B, capital T. It's a bad thing. And to live with disability makes you exceptional. It's not a bad thing, and it doesn't make you exceptional. And in the past few years, we've been able to propagate this lie even further via social media. You may have seen images like this one. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Or this one, your excuse is invalid, indeed. Or this one, before you quit, try. Yeah. These are just a couple of examples, but there are a lot of these images out there. You might have seen the little girl with no hands drawing a picture with a pencil held in her mouth. You might have seen a child running on carbon fiber prosthetic legs. And these images, there are lots of them out there. They are what we call inspiration porn. And I use the term porn deliberately because they objectify one group of people for the benefit of another group of people. So in this case, we're objectifying disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people.
So I hope that explains it and makes it a bit clearer on what it actually is beyond what I can explain. But yeah, here are some good examples, however, of progressive representation of disability in media, because it is possible beyond inspiration porn and objectification. So here we have Nell DeMarco, who was in Dancing with the Stars in 2016. He got to the finale. I think he won. I never actually watched it. I need to watch it at some point. And Gillian Ricardo, who is in The L Word. And a quote from her is that my character on The L Word has nothing to do with my disability. She just happens to have a disability. That's it. And I love that. I think it's so powerful. And then Remy, which is actually a new show that I think came out this year on Hulu. Hulu. I'm English. You don't have it. But yeah, it has a comedian called Steve Way in it. And they wanted to have disability represented in the most authentic way. And from what I've seen, it looks like they actually achieved that. So it is possible. And I think it's important to talk about the context of disability in social media too.
Yeah, so a way to catch this, guys, is, and this is why, as a person with a disability, this concept was like difficult for me to understand, because I thought that getting visibility of disabled people out there was doing what it needed to be done, until I really read a lot of papers about inspiration porn to see, okay, well, if I'm always looked at as an inspiration, then I'm always looked at as charity. And I'm so much more than charity. And that's, a lot of people, and I personally, my husband gets praised. Like, he's this amazing man for marrying a disabled woman, since I became disabled before I knew him. And that really shows that I have no other value than my husband being a great guy. And that's just an example of like inspiration porn, where the narrative is about disability. So what I do when I'm thinking about creating a new ad about people with disabilities is, Poppy just said, is if you're featuring them in that same role, it should also be be replaced with someone who doesn't have a disability. And that's where you're able to check that the role isn't just about disability. It's about that human. And I think that that's how I've been able to figure out if it is or if it's not inspiration porn.
Yeah, just humanizing it, and putting us on the same level and not putting us in another category almost. I completely agree with that. And the husband comment as well. Oh my gosh, I relate to that so much. But yeah, I'm hoping we can do another one of these and go more into like representation of disability in media, and hopefully go into that more at some point. This is a Malteser advert that I think came out maybe even like 2012 or 13, but I remember it so clearly in my head because it made such an impression on me. It has Sam Rink in it, and I just want to play it because I think it's great, and Christina actually picked it out.
So how was the big wedding?
Hiding your hair. At the end of the night, everyone's on the dance floor really getting into it, And say, this is my left wheel. This is the bride's foot.
Yeah. How awful.
Well, it wasn't all bad. Left with the best man's number.
You are terrible. I'm not inviting you to my wedding. No. That's it. You're off the list.
Yeah, I love that. It's so memorable as well. And
it's so basically what I think is really great about this ad, it shows someone with a disability in a dating scenario, and also uses crip humor. So she's able to not make fun of her disability, but make light of it. And it normalizes that she's someone that will get the best man's number. She was not someone's pity date. And I think it's just a nice interaction of someone with a disability.
Yeah, that contrast is, I really, really like that contrast. But moving on, actually, I want to talk about like creating content warnings, because in the disabled community, actually, there is a little bit of a trend of putting content warnings on things that are considered inspiration porn and the like. And I think this is also very important to consider when making your content accessible, because it goes beyond, alt text and the like. You want to make sure the content is being, sensitive subjects are discussed in a good way. And best practice of this would be to put a CW and then little 2 slashes And also, same as trigger warnings, but then you want to insert the subject, what it would be, so that someone who can avoid that. For example, with coronavirus, myself, I've been a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of press and media coverage, as I'm sure you guys have been too. Oh my gosh. And having that like content warning in a tweet, for example, before reading it means I can just skip it. And you can apply it to so many different situations like that. So, and then we want to create caption and video for video content, and that includes transcripts for podcasts. This is something people miss a lot when it comes to making podcasts. No one makes transcripts, and that always blows my mind. You want to avoid unnecessary background noise and music. Links shared should have a sense of context behind them. You want to be able to describe them so that it's not just a click here. People know what they're clicking on. For example, click here for more information on dogs. Insert article. You want to use audio narration and voiceovers where possible, or audio descriptions. And this links into integrated described video, which is a whole thing in itself, but essentially it is an in-between, like a hybrid between audio narration and audio descriptions, where it is included from the ground up and it is described. So like, you know, say I was showing you my blue dress, I'd say, I just picked up my blue dress. You put it into the script as such, rather than having to add it on later. Stylistic and decorative fonts. They look pretty in your Instagram bio and your Twitter bios. Sure, they look amazing, but they're not accessible. And the most recommended fonts would be the Randa, Tahoma, Comic Sans, which people poke fun at a lot, is one of the most accessible fonts you could possibly use. So always please bear that in mind. And also use emojis sparingly and mindfully. These both relate to screen readers, and I'm going to show you now some examples of stylistic and decorative fonts and emojis being used too much. So this is a tweet, but you can see the stylistic font, and it says, you think it's cute to write your tweets and usernames this way, but have you listened to what they sound like with assisted technologies like VoiceOver? This is what they sound like.
Edit text. U. Mathematical sans serif italic small t. Mathematical sans serif italic small h. Mathematical sans serif italic small 1. Mathematical sans serif italic small n. Mathematical sans serif italic small k. It's mathematical script small c. Mathematical script small u. Mathematical script small t. E2. Mathematical sans serif bold small d. Mathematical sans serif bold small r. Mathematical sans serif bold small 1. Mathematical.
Okay, I'm not going to put the whole of that, but I feel like it would be a long process with a screen reader to get through that whole entire tweet or bio, wherever you're using it online. This happened the other day. This literally happened on the 17th. Microsoft, which are great for accessibility, I can't fault them in so many areas, they actually tweeted this for World Emoji Day, and it looks pretty, and it is considered emoji art, I guess, but it's also very inaccessible. And this is what it would sound like on a screen reader to read this tweet. Okay, again, I'm not gonna play the whole thing. You can listen to it if you want later, but you get the gist. It goes through the whole thing, and instead of just, you know, skipping through it like you would normally on your Twitter timeline or whatever, someone with a screen reader is gonna get completely caught off guard by that. It's a headache, to say the least. Just some final points. Be mindful of color schemes that you use and research what is best before choosing. There are various websites that can help you do this with contrasting. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit though. And also, icons and visual cues can be helpful for some disabilities. I know this may involve having to include alt text and describe them, and you may want to avoid using them, but it can be very helpful. Always be mindful that accessibility is ever evolving and it's being added to constantly, which is great, which means it's hard to keep up with, however. And what may be basic accessibility today may change tomorrow, and adapting is key to creating online content. Now we're going to talk about trending platforms, and just go into depth of how you can create content that is accessible for your audience. So first of all, we're going to talk about Instagram. Instagram is a photo and video sharing social network. You can create content, you can add filters, you can organize with tags and by location. You can share photos and videos with your followers. You can browse other people's photos and videos, and you can like and follow other people's content. So, basic summary. This is how you can make your Instagram accessible. You want to be able to include photo and video descriptions in your captions. This is important because even though Instagram does have alt text, if you can, you want to try and include it in captions because not everyone uses screen readers. And especially on videos, because you cannot add alt text to videos. So they need to implement that at some point, I'm just saying. You want to be able to include closed captioning, captions, and audio narration in your images and stories. So what I said earlier with the integrated video descriptions, that sort of thing, you want to talk about it. Talk about what you're doing in the stories. You want to use the text feature on the editing in stories to create subtitles, or Cliptomatic, which I put the QR code on the screen in case you want to scan it. It will take you to the iOS App Store. But essentially it's an app that you can talk to and it will live subtitle what you're saying, so you don't have to type it out. And also just video editing apps. Again, it doesn't have to be a full transcript, but like enough to get the theme. Enough so that if you're watching this without the sound on, you'd know what was happening and what it was about. And some people do rely purely on audio. Please remember that. People also so if it's a silent video, the people who rely on audio aren't gonna know what's going on. So bear that in mind also with like audio narration and like. So manually adding alternate text. I can never say it. This will be read after the username, but before the caption by screen readers, just so you know whereabouts it is. You want to be descriptive but concise and quick. Alt text can be added to old photos too. So bear that in mind. You can go through your old photos and do this now, today. I highly recommend, but this is how you want to go about doing it. So you want to take your photo or upload a photo to Instagram, go through the filter and the editing process, tap next, and then at the bottom here, wait, can I put a pointer on? Oh, now I feel fancy. Oh no, you can't see it. Down here, there we go. You know, you can see where it is. The advanced settings. You want to click on that, and that'll take you to a screen with turn off commenting and close friends. All this stuff. And you want to click on this bit here. It says accessibility, write alt text. Then they'll come up with the box, and you can put in your alt text. And you want to keep them concise. You know, don't go overboard, but also, you know, make sure that if someone wasn't looking at this photo, they would know an idea of what the photo is. So say you're sitting outside at the beach, you want to put taken in daytime, me outside sitting in shorts and a t-shirt, eating an ice cream. Simple as that, but that is all you need. Lovely and concise. Down here is just a quick way to add it to existing photos. There is a 3-dot menu icon on the top right of Instagram. Every photo will have it. You click on that and it'll come up and it'll have edit. Click on edit and it'll have alt text in the bottom right of the photo. It is a little bit hidden, but it is there. And then you can add it and it'll come up with the box. Twitter, my personal favorite app, but I'm biased. It's described as the SMS of the internet, messaging app of the internet. It's a microblogging site and social networking service, and you can create posts and interact with messages known as tweets. You can post, like, retweet things, which is, you know, resharing something. Tweets are under 280 characters, so very short and concise, and audio and video tweets remain limited to about 140 seconds for most accounts. So when writing a tweet, you want to use plain English. So avoid acronyms and make sure the meaning of the tweet is very plainly clear. And you can use readability, so www.readable.com, and you can copy and paste the tweet in there just beforehand to just see, you know, will someone understand this? What is this like on the key of readability? But I found that very helpful in the past with more professional like tweets I've made. You want to include captions, audio narration, and description for images and video, very similar to Instagram, but Twitter doesn't have editing in the editing process, but you can add text on. So if you do want to embed captions or have open captions, which is captioning on the video where you can view it on the video, you will have to do that externally or use something like Cliptomatic, which I highly recommend. It is $5, but once you bought it, you don't have to keep, you know, there's no subscription or anything. Highly recommend it. Captions and transcripts and descriptions can be added below in a thread format. and accessed by users easily. And I do highly recommend doing this. Utilize threads. They are so helpful for large amounts of information. Don't be afraid to make more than one tweet and make a thread, because there is your opportunity to add more information to the tweet you put. So yeah, highly recommend that. You want to remember to use camel case. Hashtags are obviously big on Twitter, as on Instagram, but more so on Twitter. You want to add alt text to media, but you can also add alt text to GIFs. So any GIF you post via the GIF search engine on Twitter, you can add alt text to that, which is bizarre because you can't add it to video yet, but you can add to GIF. So please remember to do that. And here is how you can do that with photos, not with GIFs. I should have. If you want to know that, ask me and I will tell you in person. But this is how you can add it to like a photo. So you will make your tweet like usual. You will put your photo into the tweet. And then down here, I'll have add description. And then it will come up with this little box here. And you can just do this, a similar thing to what I said about Instagram, very concise. Let's say, a field of wildflowers with hills in the background with clouds overhead. Very simple, but enough. This alternative text will be read after the username and tweet content, so it'll be read at the end, which is a bit different to Instagram. The limit is 1,000 characters for each image, and again, cannot be added to videos. And you can, you can re-edit it. Like once you press apply here, you can go back in and edit it. But once you posted the tweet, unlike Instagram, you can't go and change it or edit it again. So bear that in mind. Once it's done, it's done. Let's talk again about emoji art. So I know I just briefly mentioned it, but this also was on Twitter the other day. There is a big trend of like using text to make photos and stuff, and photos, images, graphics. And this is what this would sound like to a screen reader.
On Twitter, today's tweet, ________________________________________________________________________________________________________________
Okay. I played the whole thing, so I want you to get an idea of how long that takes. Like, that's a long time. You know, if you're reading that, you process it very quickly, but a screen reader, that's a good 20 seconds wasted. So just bear that in mind with any emoji art. I also wanted to add keyboard shortcuts because I actually didn't know this and I just thought it was helpful. This isn't to do with accessibility and creating accessibility for your audience. This is more to do with you as a user, but I just wanted to add this in case it might help one of you. So yeah, could be helpful. YouTube, okay, I love YouTube. It's a US online video sharing and hosting service owned by Google, and the content ranges from all sorts of video content, from music videos, educational films, audio news, movie trailers, and live streams. So you can upload, view, rate, and share. You can add playlists, you can comment on videos, you can subscribe to other users, and this is how you can make your videos accessible. There are built-in subtitles in YouTube. I don't know if many people know this, and it's very frustrating, but they will auto-generate subtitles for you. And they will be about 80% correct. So when your video is uploaded, you can see it will come up here with the details. And when it's uploaded, you can edit the existing subtitles so that they are then accurate, in sync with the video, and include proper closed captioning. And closed captioning is essentially subtitles and dialogue, but then has additional meaningful sounds like laughter and doors slamming. So anything that might be important in the background, like a child crying or whatever, you want to include that. And then when you make those videos, make sure to add CC to the title of your video so those who are looking for content with closed captioning can find it easily. And I also wanted to share like a quick little like tip that I've learned from doing social media for like influencers. Screen record the video with the closed captioning or the captioning you put on the YouTube video, because then you can share that with embedded captions on other social medias. And it's just a quick way to get subtitles. TikTok. Let's talk about TikTok. So yeah, next I'm going to talk about aren't particularly accessible, but we're going to talk about ways we can try and make them a little bit more accessible. So for those that don't know, TikTok is a Chinese video sharing social networking service. and it's quick clips ranging from short dances, lip syncing, comedy videos, and all sorts of other genres. Videos up to 60 seconds long, and they include stickers and filters and text additions, and you can also do live streams. So making it accessible, this is the tricky part. There's not a lot you can do with TikTok. However, the disabled community is pulling through. They're adding subtitles to pretty much as many TikToks as they can. This is even outside the disabled community now. I've noticed people even outside that are adding closed captioning. So it's happening. People are trying. But similar to Instagram, it can be done in the app editing process. You want to add that text, which is the example here. And I actually added a QR code which has a petition that will take you to a petition that is wanting captioning on TikTok. So if you want to check that out, I've added the QR code, but I will add a link in like a document at some point. You want to avoid popular flashy filters and loud audio trends. I know they're a big thing on TikTok, but they're not that accessible, which it can give me a headache. I have chronic migraines myself, and there's this trend of flashing lights. It can be very inaccessible for me. Another tip or trick is to provide captioning or descriptions in the comments or in the captions. The caption itself may not have enough space to provide a full-on details and descriptions. So utilize the comments if you can. I've noticed a lot of people, especially in the disabled community, doing that, utilizing the comments, because then it becomes text-based. So those descriptions are text-based and more practical than embedded. This is embedded, for example. This is like open captioning here. It's more practical. So I don't know, it's still up in the air of how accessible TikTok is as screen readers, but you know, if the screen reader does get the chance to use TikTok, at least they can read the comments and get some description from it. Snapchat, even less accessible. But this is why it's important to talk about them, because we can find ways to try and make it more accessible. So for those who don't know, Snapchat is a messaging app. It has pictures and messages that are only available for a short time, and then they become inaccessible to the recipients. Users can add snaps to their stories for 24 hours, which then show in chronological order. You can send and receive videos and photos. You can use filters and AR, and there's a discovery page so you can find people to follow. Yeah. But how to make it accessible? Likewise, you want to add subtitles onto your Snapchat as much as you can. This is luckily done in-app. You can do this in the editing process. And also making the font large and bold. The sender of a message can click the T button to make the text large and bold, as I'm sure a lot of younger people will know, and also change the color. And this applies to all platforms, but it's particularly helpful on Snapchat because, as you can see here, this is an example I've added in. The difference in contrast, when you have that background, I know that the text is smaller, but the text is bigger, but you can't read it. There's no point without the changing the contrast here. So yeah, I want to just add that in to bear in mind how important that is. So contrast matters, right? I just dabbled in that now. I just want to show you some good examples of contrasting and how you can then apply that to social media, right? So here's a really good example of a background and then the text contrast. And then a really bad example. You can't read that. Same applies to Snapchat, right? And here's just some more examples. You can check your contrast of your text and background on some websites. I will create a document with all these links in at some point and send it to you. But here are just some examples of these. But for example, these texts and backgrounds, they pass. This can also be applied to like Instagram and you know TikTok, when you can add the backgrounds to your text, right? So this just gives you a little bit of a foundation to think about contrast on your text in your social medias, posts and stories. It's not just you. TikTok and Snapchat are harder and they're at least weirder to use than other apps. They're made to be like this and inaccessible. It's not you, it's bad design. I just wanted to point that out. Now we're going to go into making content and what that involves, because it can be quite a daunting process to want to make content but have no idea where to start. So let's dabble in a bit of Adobe Creative Cloud and the services they provide. They're not considered particularly accessible. I know a lot of my disabled friends struggle with using Photoshop and Premiere Pro A lot of my visually impaired friends just very much dislike it, but not all hope is lost. I'm going to give you some ins and outs here so that then you can decide what you think will work for you. So when you actually go to look up accessibility at Adobe, there isn't a lot. They focus a lot on creating accessible content with their services rather than the user's accessible experiences. So here's the QR code here will take you to this page if you wish to scan that and check it out yourself. But this is all they have. The rundown isn't great, but I just thought I would share that with you. So let's go the lowdown of what Adobe Creative Cloud is, because it's quite a daunting process. Like, what is it? What does that even mean, right? So the main tier. So all the features of Creative Cloud and access to all applications. So Creative Cloud has multiple features like online cloud storage and a bunch of other websites that you can make portfolios with. And the main tier will have all of this, including the applications that I will go into in a little bit. There is one tier where you can just get the photography apps, which is Photoshop and Lightroom. You can get it by single application use, so you can just choose one of your applications and that's the one you're having. That's it though, unfortunately. And also all apps Adobe stock. I wish that would go away. And this has all the standard features of the Creative Cloud and also Adobe stock, which is the free for use photos and videos that they have that you can then use for your content yourself. And these apps include software for things like graphic design, which is Illustrator. These are just examples. Video editing software, which is like Premiere Pro and Premiere Rush. Web development, which is Dreamweaver, and Photoshop and Lightroom, which is photography. I said that the wrong way around. They do also have mobile apps, which I will also get into. The optional services include things like cloud and storage, which I just mentioned, and subscription is monthly or annual. And as long as you maintain that subscription, you can use them. But the moment you stop paying that, you won't be able to use the services or the software. Bear that in mind. But there is a student and business discount. So if you're a student, you will get it heavily discounted. And it maintains updates via the internet, so you don't have to worry about that. And also it's installed directly on your computer. Adobe software, the fun bit. I spent 3 years doing it at university, and I'm by no means a pro, but I'm just going to quickly tell you what each one kind of does so you can get an idea of what might work for you and maybe what you're into. So first of all, we have Photoshop. This is the one I think everyone pretty much knows this one. But this one is for sort of photography and drawing and graphic. So you can create, edit, enhance images and designs, do digital paintings, animation, and graphic design. But if you're more into photography, I highly recommend sticking with Lightroom, because this is mainly for capturing, editing, and sharing photos all in one place. So yeah, if you're into photography, I check out Lightroom first. Then there's Illustrator, which is actually what I used to like create my first awful designs of adaptive fashion clothing ages ago. But they use vectors to make things, which is difficult. I'll get into more about that in a minute though, which is difficult to manage. But if you're interested in that, that is where you want to go. Adobe Portfolio, I use this personally to make my portfolio when I was at university. A very quick way to set up a website that showcased my work. It is included in the Creative Cloud subscription. So, you know, that's a kind of 2-in-1 if you're wanting to make a website and get a Photoshop subscription. It is currently free for 2 months at the moment, so you can check it out, try it out. Maybe you just need it for a short time. You know, that's one way of doing it. And Adobe Spark. Let's talk about Adobe Spark. This is Adobe Spark. There's a lot to it. There's Spark Post, Spark Page, and Spark Video. And essentially, one creates social graphics, one creates web pages, and one creates short videos. And it's meant to be quick and easy, and it is. It simplifies the process very well. It is free to use. So this is why I highly recommend it. It is free to use, but it comes without some extras. But at the moment, they do have the higher tier for 2 months free currently. And I think the 2 months free thing is because of everything at the moment, quarantine. But you know, if you're interested in it, then why not give it a go? They do have a desktop version of Spark, but also application version. And this is also available on Android as well as iOS. And they have bundles for the apps. And the apps have less functions in it, I'd say, than the desktop, but they're great. Like, so great. And you can get the bundles with post and video and page here. And this is just a little bit of post here. You can get the whole thing in. But yeah, that's just talking about apps. Let's talk about the free Adobe stuff, because we like free things. If you want a taster of Adobe, I highly recommend starting off with the apps, because if you haven't experienced it before, you don't really know what you're getting into. Like, I still get daunted by it by myself. So you can really utilize these apps. For example, Lightroom, you won't have access to the presets that maybe you've seen some bloggers talking about, but you will have access to the basic settings. And then Photoshop Express, Photoshop Sketch, Photoshop Fix, Photoshop Mix. Wow, what a tongue twister. These are all great. The individual apps that do individual things, so bear that in mind. Express has the basics, Sketch has drawing, Fix has skin smoothing, so if you like Facetune, check that out. It is pretty good, actually, in my experience. Not that I Facetune my photos. And then Mix is more about blending photos. I think this is a screenshot from Mix. I screenshot a bunch of things from Photoshop, so I think that's the Mix one. And they all have tutorials, which I find a little bit easier to understand than the tutorials on the desktop, like downloadable Adobe ones. So yeah, they're really great introductions. And then what I've just mentioned earlier, Adobe Spark, page and video, highly recommend checking those out. My YouTube friends all use, I think, Adobe Post. They all use that for their thumbnails. I use something else, but I'll show you in a second. It is great. And then Illustrator Draw, which is what I mentioned earlier with the vectors, it's a really great introduction into Illustrator. It still daunts me. I still have no idea how to use it half the time. I get by somehow. But yeah, check those out, see how you get on with them, and then see, maybe Adobe is right for you. Other content creating software. I made sure to try and include as many free, well, these are all free. I wanted to find free dupes, right? Because you might want the same thing that these Adobe software does, but you don't want to have to invest in the Adobe things just yet. So I highly recommend Pixel. I think it's pronounced Pixel. I've never heard anyone pronounce it before, so that's what I call it, which is a Photoshop dupe, and it has a completely free option. They all have completely free options, by the way. And then they have like a cheaper tier than Adobe and Photoshop, and they have cheaper tiers and with the extra things on them. And it has the same functions as a professional image editing software. So if you want to get into Photoshop, but you want to dip your toe in the water, check it out. I highly recommend it. And then there's Lumen 5. I think the 5 is pronounced. I don't know if it's like Deb Mouse, the DJ. I'm not really sure. This is a free option to use, and obviously with the free option you are limited with like the features, but it's very similar to Premiere Pro. It's professional, but you can also create social media videos on it, and it does use AI software to help you edit the video, which I think is from my experience, Premiere Pro hasn't really got anything like that, so that could be definitely utilized. And then Canva is my baby. I use Canva to make this presentation. I will always rep it. I love it. This is a great InDesign dupe. It's great for graphic design, and it's a platform that allows users to create graphics of like anything. If you can think it, you can probably make it on Canva, and it's a very easy process. They have like free elements that you can use and add things to, and templates. Yeah, I love Canva, big fan. And these are all available on iOS and Android apps too, if you haven't got like a desktop. So I wanted to cover all bases as much as possible. Let's talk about Final Cut Pro. So Final Cut Pro is Apple's version of Adobe's Premiere Pro. And I think people also get a little bit intimidated by it too. If you know iMovie, I know some of the collaborators have actually used iMovie to make some of their videos already. iMovie is great, and it's free with every Mac, MacBook, MacBook Air. Also, I think you can get an iPad, and you can get on, I know, you can get on iPhones too now. It is great for beginners. If you want to dabble in making video for the first time ever, it is the best place to start. It has great accessibility, obviously with iOS, and there is an app version, as I mentioned, but it has got limited features. The professionals aren't using it. So if you want to upgrade from like iMovie, say you've you have mastered iMovie now, check out Final Cut Pro. This is what the big boys, again, like I said earlier, are using. But this is a one-off payment compared to Adobe. And I wanted to mention that because I feel like Adobe, it's a yearly subscription, and sometimes you get sort of taken into that. But with Final Cut Pro, you pay a one-off, I think it's about $200, which is a lot, but if a lot of my friends have had it for a decade now, and it's a one-off purchase with free updates. Accessibility is the accessibility of Final Cut Pro is very valued by the disabled community, and all my disabled YouTuber friends use Final Cut Pro if they have a MacBook or Mac. Yeah. It has animated titles and transitions and graphics beyond the capabilities iMovie. I said down here that the 33-day trial, it's not. There's actually 90 days at the moment. So if you wanted to kick off your YouTube career right now, I would highly recommend doing that now, because of the pandemic, they've actually put up to 90 days. So do check that out. This is a video by, as I said here, the video editing software used by blind filmmakers. This is James Raz. He's legally blind, and he edits all of his videos on Final Cut Pro, and I just wanted to play this video real quick.
Story, but when I was 14, got a Mac computer that was finally visually accessible to me. Didn't cause eye strain. It switched in between showing low vision to being totally blind thanks to voiceover. Apple makes all their software accessible, so including iMovie and Final Cut, which I ended up learning, I was able to make movies even with my eyes shut. So to this day, I use Final Cut Pro, and Final Cut Pro is definitely seen an evolution. When it first came out, it was very bare bones. Then now it's got all these advanced features, and the newest version has a really cool color wheel system that
Yeah, that was just a quick introduction. If you want the link to that video, I'll send it to you. If anyone wants any of the links to anything here, just let me know. I will send them to you immediately. But yeah, so people with visual impairments can use Final Cut Pro. I mean, that is because Apple had made their devices so accessible from the ground up from the beginning. And then Final Cut Pro is just the evolution of that. So yeah. Some digital content tips. So I want to, round this all up by helping you apply this in the best way to your social media. And so here are just some tips that can help you further that. Always keep your demographic in mind, like how old are they and where do they live, where are they from, what do they do? Don't be afraid to mix your content up. I've always been very scared of doing this myself, and I think different people respond to different things, and you want to play with things and find out what works best for you, and that will help you reach as many people as possible. Digital content works really well when you start with the benefit for the user or the headline, and this draws people in and holds their attention as they want to know more. My favorite example of this is recipe videos. For example, when they show the food at the beginning, like those amazing Instagram videos where they show you the food, and then you see the food and you're like, well, now I have to stay because now I need to know how to make that because that looks so yummy. That's how they do it. They keep you in. So I always, when I'm making a video, I always try and think like that, like how can I keep them wanting more? I highly recommend planning live video content. When I say live, I don't mean literally live. I mean Instagram stories and Snapchat, because you want to keep those concise. And I do recommend storyboarding, which sounds weird, but it does help. And then also always remember, images tell stories and increase social media engagement. Remember alt text. And Twitter has a 35% increase when you use an image. So do bear that in mind, even if it's just you tweeting how your day was, put a fun meme in there, it might increase your engagement. And don't be afraid to answer your audience questions and have call to actions. Call to actions are things like donate to my Patreon. No, I haven't even got a Patreon, but things like that. And use active language such as like and subscribe. Keep your audience engaged and active. Don't be afraid to use white space. I'm very bad at this myself. And use alternative colors to make elements stand out. And make people's eyes drawn to things. When you create content, make sure it has value and is evergreen. I will go more into that evergreen content hopefully in the next one we do. But evergreen essentially is making things timeless and making things last. When you look at something in 10 years' time, will it still be relevant? Will people still relate to it? And you want to ask yourself things like, is it useful? Is it interesting? Is it informative? Is it entertaining? Is it shareable? There's so much stuff being put on social media these days. I feel like you want to do yourself and your following a service by making it worthwhile and valuable. So yeah, that's my biggest tip, I'd say, for content on social media and the digital world. I hope you enjoyed me talking about things I sort of know. If you have any questions though, let me know and I will answer anything, literally anything.